The opioid crisis is the deadliest drug epidemic in U.S. history. Over the past decade, it's killed more people than all of America's wars since World War II combined. The primary culprit is the synthetic drug fentanyl. And most fentanyl is made overseas, specifically in China. China's government claims that it's trying to halt exports of fentanyl. But how true is that? Ben Westhoff is the author of the new book, Fentanyl INC., and Tucker spoke with him recently.
So you spent a lot of time looking at this one critical issue. And again, God bless you for doing that. We could have a long conversation about why a lot of other people aren't doing the same thing, but they're not. You did. Sum up, if you would, China's role in the fentanyl trade.
Well, over 90% of the illicit fentanyl that is killing Americans is made in China. And Chinese chemical and pharmaceutical industries are huge. So it's pretty out of control. And China's government says, well, it's too out of control for us to be able to stop it. But what they're not saying is that the Chinese government actually offers subsidies and tax rebates for the export of fentanyl and fentanyl-like drugs.
So as a result of that policy, more Americans are dying every year than died during the entire Vietnam War. And yet we in this country don't really see it as an act of aggression by China. Why do you think that is?
Well, China is not one thing. They're, bureaucrats at all levels. And some are legitimately trying to crack down. They're doing what the U.S. is asking. But more provincial leaders, others, want their exports increased. And ultimately, that's what these rebates are for. China wants to encourage its exports of its chemical industry to grow the economy. And so in some sense, one hand doesn't know what the other hand is doing.
Right. How does this drug enter the United States?
It enters the U.S. in two ways. One is directly through the mail. So the United States Postal Service, FedEx, UPS deliver these drugs right from China to people's doors. The other way is through Mexico. The Mexican cartels order these drugs from China and then ship them up through the U.S. border.
Or order the chemicals from which fentanyl is made, or fentanyl already made?
Both. Mexico lacks the skilled chemical industry to make finished fentanyl, and so it imports the fentanyl precursors, as they're known, the fentanyl ingredients from China, make it the rest of the way, and then send it up north through the border.
Is there anything the U.S. government can do to stop this drug from entering the country?
It's extremely difficult. Through the mail, President Trump has demanded more searches of these packages, but there's just such an incredible volume, millions every month. It's impossible to search all of them. And, he's talked about a border wall and things like that, but from Mexico, it mostly just comes up in people's cars, smuggled in gas tanks, in fake seats, and all sorts of ways. So it's extremely hard to stop it from getting into the country.
Those of us who are over 40 remember well the government's response to the crack epidemic, which was to flood media with anti-drug statements, propaganda really, but it had an effect. You don't see anything like that going on now. This epidemic basically is unfolding in silence. Why do you think that is?
I think people are starting to realize, because they've seen their own loved ones killed, that drug abuse is a disease. And you can tell kids not to take drugs, just like you can tell them not to have sex. And the intentions may be all well and good, but we've just seen that it's not effective.
So because it's difficult, people don't try?
Well, I think that there's some good changes being made. There's been a move towards more care, towards not arresting the really low-level offenders, treatment, but we're really the tip of the iceberg. A lot of people started from taking OxyContin and these other drugs,
right,
prescribed by their doctors, and these are law-abiding people who suddenly, when their prescriptions ran out, found themselves buying street heroin.
Yeah, they're enslaved, literally. Ben, thanks very much for coming on tonight and for the book that you wrote on fentanyl. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.